Well, does anyone have any questions? We could open it up to kind of a more informal kind of chat if anyone has anything. Yeah.
You've spoken a lot about the process and about motivation, but can you speak more to the actual visual concept of this room and decision making to create this room?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I can add to what I said before. I mean, I kind of try to plan everything out beforehand in the computer and sort of like see how everything was going to work together. But I am a planner in that regard. I don't know. Could you like ask more about that, or?
Well, visually, there's this big altar in front, and there's this big wall on the right, and there's a line of small pieces on the left, and there's a concept behind that. There's a decision-making line down why there seems to be there's an idea going on that I'm trying to get a bit of a grasp of the underlying concept of why this space exists, like not in a portfolio, not in a book, but as an environment.
Well, the honest answer is it came together in pieces. So I think figuring out a way to organize it that made the most sense was really the challenge. I kind of had a sense of what I wanted to do with this wall from the beginning. And then the death car that was one of the last things that sort of came together, and it was more impressionistic. I don't know. Visually,
you can say it's intuitive.
Well, visually, I just kept working and moving things around, in the planning stage until I felt like there was a harmony. Other than that, other than knowing what this was going to go on this wall, because it was like the sort of focal point, and I always try to do that have like one thing that's sort of the main thing that you see when you walk in, like that grabs you, and then the other things that sort of reveal themselves as you dig into the show. So that's something that I did in the last show too. There was a large bell banner kind of thing, and then you start to get into the details. Does that sort of answer the question? All right, thanks, Leslie.
Richard?
The whole room sort of, to me, feels like a sort of history painting, and trying to, how do you do history painting now? And especially in Dallas. And I couldn't, when you were talking, and I was thinking about some of the references, and I was talking to you before about this as well. I think the whole show invites the viewer to kind of connect sometimes slightly oblique references, so you've got the Magritte apple, and there are obvious connections, like there's the apple and the Magritte, and there's the apple and Adam and Eve, but then it's William Blake's Adam and Eve, it's not anybody's Adam. So, but I couldn't help thinking while you were talking about the Kennedy show, the PMA thing, and how there's a kind of a natural pairing in front of them, which is quite, I don't know if that's in any way intentional, but the idea of taking a rubbing of something to try and get its most direct realness and actual imprint, which is like photography or like something else. It's a bit like with the Kennedy show at the museum at the moment. I feel like they're trying to present the alternative history of Dallas, not Kennedy's assassination, but what Dallas was at that moment, but it's almost impossible to get rid of the image that everyone knows of Kennedy being shot in the motorcade. just in the same way that the Twin Towers coming down is this kind of available kind of image. So anyway, back to the history thing, looking at some of this, there's a lot of European sort of sensibility in it, it occurred to me. It reminds me of Kiefer and that sort of thing, which is as much to do with reclaiming myth, or generating myth and fusing that with a sense of history, because in a sense that's what we have. Because the Bonnie and Clyde thing is a tremendous part of American history, which if you take the moral component of the robbery out of it, was actually clearly highly entertaining for the rest of America, like watching The Wire or something is now. It's cathartic, or reading a soap opera about, or reading the London Times about Jack the Ripper's latest victim or something. It becomes a kind of ghoulish pastime. But anyway, I wondered if you could. I'm not really sure that there's much of a question really, but I'm sort of reminded of Canellis a bit, and then Magritte, the weirdness of Magritte. And Magritte's all about the ordinary suburban street or room where something untoward is going on, like there's a giant apple, or that sense of something. Dallas seems to have become that place. Since the assassination, it seems to have become that place that's like the ordinary suburban quiet street. Like a post-war period, it becomes very genteel, and everyone drinks tea and stuff. But I don't know, it seems to me like you're reminding us that of different things, sort of.
Yeah, well, I think rather than presenting history, as I've continued to do art as research or research as art, I wonder what associations I can bring to that build on what's already there. So I haven't seen the show at the DMA yet, but I do think it's interesting to sort of look at a different aspect to get a deeper sense of something. I find in that way it sort of becomes more personal for me too. This historical moment becomes relevant again in a different way. And how does it relate to any of us now?
What's the research as art or whatnot is, it's interesting because you're not doing research for any specific kind of academic or kind of historical or scientific project. You don't have to place onto it various structures of meaning or exposition or kind of linear or logical kind of coherence. So you allow everything can kind of exist in suggestiveness, and in that suggestiveness you're able to generate all these other connections where this moment kind of connects to all these other things, just a partly subjective reflection on your own and partly because these things are intrinsic to what it is that makes the entire episode kind of fascinating.
Yeah. Well, to sort of build on the personal connection that you're talking about, a lot of the history is sort of not Bonnie and Clyde, but all the stuff that kind of goes around it, around their story, and that's true of my other projects as well. It's like, where are Bonnie and Clyde here? Because they're really, they're, except for the symbol key, they're not
Right.
major figures. It's just like the peripheral thing. But one of the things, and I found that I want to see the work, see those images as if I'm in that role. See it through their eyes, sort of, and put myself in that position. So rather than the camera seeing the actors, in the car going toward the ambush, it's like I see out the windscreen, instead of, it's just more interesting to me.
Mm-hmm. Actually, doesn't Arthur Penn have exactly that shot in the movie?
Maybe.
It's like a POV from Warren Beatty's perspective as they're driving up on the ambush. I think I remember that.
I bet you're right. It's been a long time since I didn't want to watch it before.
Before this?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Why was that? Just to keep it fresh and not have another layer of interpretation?
Well, I just wanted to. I didn't want to have other images in my head than were already there.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted to go out and find my own. I don't know. It seems like if other artists' voices are in my head while I'm trying to work, I don't know how large a role they'll play.
Mm-hmm.
So I can take responsibility for the stuff that comes out of my head. But if I don't know why I'm doing it, because there's these other influences, I don't know, I don't want to be responsible for that. I'm sorry, I'm talking really quietly again.
That's fine. Does anyone else have any questions?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. So JMPL and numbers are references John Milton, Paradise Lost, and then a line number. And those lines are the little sections of words that I think are pertinent to the story are in the show list. They reference the work that has those keys in it. So it seemed like a natural progression to go to Paradise Lost, which was funny because when I think I was in high school, and my family was taking a trip somewhere, and we went to this bookstore, and the cover of Paradise Lost was just amazing. And I was writing a lot of lyrics for my punk band at the time, and there were just all these like colorful demons like falling into the hole, I just thought it was beautiful. And I think I just like paged through it to like get fun lyric ideas, but as a part of this project, I went back through and listened to it and on audiobook, and had the book that I would reference, and it adds some nice layers to the story for me. There's also some little words and phrases from the Bible in the symbol key as well. Was that it? All right.
I look around and see obviously mostly black and white, and there's the only color is really in the assemblage up there. Is there a point besides kind of like dark, good, evil, like photography, or what was your meaning behind doing strictly black and white?
Well, I've kind of been I was working strictly in black and white for a long time, and it was, as we were talking about before, one body of work sort of feeds off the other. The one that preceded, a couple that preceded that were bright work, and it's like a good life lesson. I don't think I would have hung that work on my wall. And so, once I realized that, I realized I was really going in the wrong direction.
The color work you wouldn't have hung?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to like really go off the rails before you realize that, before you sort of find your way. But so I just eliminated all color, except for, there's always color, but it's essentially black and white or very desaturated. And then I just, it sort of felt like this comfortable constraint for me. It sort of became more natural. So when color does come into the work, with the symbol key and the canvases, it's intentional. With the canvases, it sort of is a nod to the color of the death card, which was tan. So it's, if there is color, there's probably a reason for it, and I think rather than just using it because it becomes a sort of perceptual stimulant, it's very intentional and ties back into the concept instead of just arbitrary, just because it's bright, it's attractive. And probably that's kind of what makes it more meditative too, is the fact that there's not a lot of color, but I think there's so many constraints, and I haven't put a constraint on myself as far as medium is concerned. That is a constraint that sort of like ties it together too. So.
Any other? Yes.
Looking at this wall as compared to at least a lot of the rest of the show, I mean, it seems like a somewhat heightened contrast in so far as this work could be from a different era than this work. And I personally really like sort of an eclectic approach, or being open to multiple strategies and so on. But I just wondered if you had any thoughts about, what you were thinking about when you did do this, and also the choice to kind of have one whole wall be this way, and that sort of thing.
With the death car, the height and width are the height and width of the death car. So I kind of placed that limit on it. So what eras do you see? Okay, don't worry about it. It's fine.
I mean, these pieces, because of the way they're matted and framed to me, especially, I'm not saying it really reminds me of anything in particular, but everything's very kind of carefully encased, almost as if it were an object for a museum or something, for example. And then the theatrical backdrop also is something that could go back to a lot of different eras. This looks more modern, even though it also is referential. It's not like just an expressionist painting or something. So I guess that's kind of like when he asked the question about the room, it kind of got me thinking about that aspect, and that's not very well thought through, perhaps. That's the question.
That's great. I do think that mats and sort of, especially in this case, I was trying to make everything feel on this wall very precious, and so the mats sort of heighten that, I think, and it sort of becomes a little bit more ornate, which compared to that wall, it's much more minimal in that regard. But as far as like sort of formal structures that go around it, at least. Well, one other thing that maybe was just unrelated was there were a lot of iterations of the works that came before this. And originally, I had to work through a lot of ideas, like the Clyde saxophone case. That's number 8. But the text pieces, I experimented with different ways of like putting the text together, and eventually I sort of just eliminated everything except for the reference. But what I started with was the actual lines from Paradise Lost. And when I was a kid, I used to love Mr. Wizard's World. Mm-hmm. And one of his things was you could at home make your own invisible ink. So what you do is you squeeze lemon juice, and then you draw with the lemon juice, and definitely under parental supervision, you hold it over something hot, mm-hmm. So I didn't really have anyone to like give these messages to, so it was probably like just wanting to like uncover mysteries in the world that just as a kid you don't know, but I would hold it over the toaster, but they said like 6 inches, but it was taking so long, so I moved it down closer, mm-hmm. and it caught on fire, and so I called my mom, and she ran in, but she just painted her nails, which I guess was more important. At this point, the flames are like, at least in the child's memory, they're like 5 feet high.
Right. 50
like
feet by 50
licking
feet.
the ceiling, yeah. so she calls my dad, and he came in and unplugged the toaster, but I thought, maybe I should use that as a medium for this show. And I experimented with it, and I was like, I'm not going to do that again. But it didn't really matter anyway. I think that this solution was a lot better.
Well, the Milton recurs. Another thing kind of visually that recurs are the engraving samples that you pull. And I guess, is there any thought, was that just a kind of a visual kind of stylistic cue, or is there any thought behind why that incorporating some of those things into the other pieces?
Well, it's kind of born out of just, I'm a huge fan of that era of work. I think it's Doré, Gustave Doré, and Albrecht Dürer. I just have a real fondness for that work. So Doré did engravings of Paradise Lost, and so the background for the arrows is from that series. But I just Xeroxed a page of Satan falling and flipped it upside down and worked it over with ash, and then put the arrows on top, and the title is Arrows, but it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to arrows, tying back into Bonnie and Clyde. So, and the precision, I don't know, I try to draw pen and ink in that style, and it's just, I don't know how they got the work so fine, because those are engravings. I mean, it's so intricate and delicate. I don't know, I just love it, that work, so just brought it into this. There's a lot of, you mentioned Magritte and Duchamp with that piece. Stephen Perino references with the reconstituted canvases.
Right.
Robert Indiana with Love in the corner of the death car, flipped upside down. Yeah, I don't know, it's like just making puzzles, sort of.
Any other questions?
So every time we've been talking, you reveal another secret, something very important about each piece. The size of the death car, each piece along here, everything has a special importance to rocks and mag. Is it important that we all know this? Because if you weren't here to tell us all of this, we would miss so much of the puzzle. Is that something that you're looking at addressing in the future? I know you used to do all the text and you took that out. But how do you feel about us getting the puzzle, or is it more for you? Kind of as a kid, you're alone and you're making that puzzle.
That's a good question. My hope is that the work works on a purely visual standpoint, but can also, it's just like the more time you spend with it, the more you learn about it, the richer it becomes. I think that's true of a lot of things in life, but I like setting those things up and sort of leaving it open-ended. So I think if I'm successful at doing that, then it doesn't matter, but it gets better with time. So hopefully I'm succeeding in that.
Anyone else? Well, thanks so much for chatting.
Thank you,
great.
Peter. I appreciate
it.
it.